Hello, book nerds, and thank you, Jean, for inviting me to my first ever vlog. I'm going to talk about the Wishing World today, and specifically the story of how the Wishing World came to be. So the Wishing World is my latest novel, which will be out on October 25th. I'm very excited about that. It's been a wonderful journey getting from the beginning of this story to the final product coming out. And it started, actually, as a way for me to put my kids to sleep, strangely enough. This was a book I never intended to write. It was put upon me by my kids. They told me that I had to write it down because essentially what happened was I told them oral stories when they were small. They're now 10 and 12, my daughter and my son, older daughter, younger son. And at the time they were 3 and 5, and I wanted to get them to go to sleep. So I would just tell them whatever stuff popped into my head. For example, it could have just been like I was laying down between the beds that in the room that they shared, and I would say, okay, well, I'm tired, and it's fall outside, and there were leaves on the ground. So there was this leaf, and this leaf just stood up and started walking one day, and then there would be a whole story about the leaf. Well, a lot of these stories in the beginning centered around a character that's actually not in the Wishing World now, and his name was Hugo the Turtle, and he was very slow, and he would have very slow adventures and very rambling adventures, and it would put the kids to sleep. Well, it was putting me to sleep too, so then I invented a character that was more along the lines of the heroes that I usually wrote about, which for me, like I said, this was not a book I intended to write. I didn't write middle grade. I wrote, at best, like late YA fantasy all the way to very adult fantasy, like Game of Thrones kind of stuff. And so this was new ground for me when I finally did start jotting it down. But anyways, back to the telling of the oral stories. It started with Hugo the Turtle, and then it moved on to Gruffy, Pip, and Squeak, all of whom are in the book, as well as Ripple. They went to Azure City, they went to the Eternal Sea, 2 locations you'll see in the book as well. And then my kids, just after a year and a half or so of doing this, begged me to write the story down. I tried. I failed. One of the joys of writing for me is in the rough draft process, where I actually am discovering what's going to happen all along the way. I usually have a few scenes in my head, a couple characters in my head, but most of what is created happens in that rough draft for me. So I had the story all laid out, this very simple little story that I told my kids, and I was bored to tears, and I just couldn't write it. And I tried for like a year and a half to get it written down. Couldn't do it. Until I took that last run at the hill and figured out what I needed to make it interesting to me, and that was to take my daughter, Elowen, and put her as the main character. I gave her worst fear to the main character and her personality to the main character, and then I was in. I was all in. I love my family. I spend a lot of time with my kids, and we are goofy as all get out. So that then became the model of creation. I would start writing the story, and then in the days as we would have dinner or go for what we call writing walks now, they would tell me their ideas for flimflams, or ideas for oofat roots, or furbalticks, or anything in the Rob Sobulus Rogues Gallery that you'll see in the book. A lot of that stuff they came up with. And so then I would take it and get all excited and go write it down. And anyways, to kind of wrap the story up, there was a lot of creation in the midst there, but that was how the story finally got rolling, and ended up being the final product that you will see on October 25th when it comes out. So thank you so much for having me as a guest vlogger, and go forth and read, book nerds. Thank you so much for the support. Have a great evening or morning or whenever it is that you watch this.